Three Grots in a Vox is intended for a mature audience. This means there will be crude language and discussions of adult themes, especially if we're talking about tactical marines or Gabriel Seth. Viewer discretion is not only advised but encouraged. All opinions are our own and often given for humorous purposes. Any advice is given largely for entertainment purposes and would probably be ignored. But if you do learn something useful, count it as a win.
Why are we doing a silent countdown? We're going for professionalism. Should we start clapping?
Professionalism. Oh.
Make sure the sound over here
slope.
is shit.
How can we deal with
the sound over here is
John,
shit.
I've got a question for you, John.
Yes.
So all of the Blood Angel stuff in the background, I understand. All the Star Wars stuff, I understand. The Hero Quest stuff, the Necromunda stuff. Why have you got an Age of Sigmar death book?
Because I bought a giant Age of Sigmar army and the Codex, because I thought in my wisdom that one day I would actually finish painting what I have. I could play Age of Sigmar. What a fucking fool I am.
When did you buy that?
Like 3 years ago. And I found the Codex like when we were cleaning out the garage the other day, and I was like, hey, that's going to make a good picture in the background.
Okay, all right.
Well, it's not even a Codex, it's an army tome.
It's a battle tome. Yes.
Oh, my bad, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I have the Codex, I guess.
Okay.
I feel your pain because I've got the Dominion box for Age of Sigmar. I've also got the first Age of Sigmar box.
Okay,
I've
I've got
never
Soul
built
War.
any of or done anything with.
I love how the Dominion box they made loads of in the expectation it'd sell really, really well, like Indomitus did,
You
and
just
then
didn't
no
get it.
fucker wanted it.
What's Dominion? Is that the third one? Because I've got Soul War. I think that was the second
It's
one.
a
it's the third
Sigmar
one.
3 launch box, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, no, I never... I bought the second one and that's me.
with the character in it who could potentially be a really good Sanguinius conversion because she got huge
Oh,
wings.
right, yeah, with the huge wings. Why don't we have a fucking Sanguinius with huge wings? Anyway,
Right, because he's dead,
do.
John, that's why.
I got Tycho. He's been dead for a while. We got 2 Tychos.
Well, no, we've got one Tycho. We just colour him gold or black, depending on what mood we're in.
Sure.
Right, okay, so we better get on with our episode then, haven't we?
Probably an
because
idea.
I keep fading in and out of focus still, which is
Yeah,
really
it's quite funny
annoying.
watching that happen.
Why does it keep... I don't know. It's been perfect every episode, and then this evening it's just like, do you know what? Fuck you. We're not going to work.
We'll deal with it. We'll cope.
We'll deal with it. We'll just look at the PowerPoint. Don't look at my face. You'll just be jealous.
Yeah.
And we'll look at the PowerPoint instead. Can you gentlemen see that all right?
Can indeed, yes.
I can.
So
yes.
this is a Patreon request. We have been requested to talk about our hobby setups and hobby tips and things. So we thought that tonight we would spend some time talking about hobby things. And well, I'm going to be drinking beer currently on Kirin, but that's going to change to some Lunar Haze when I've finished it.
Well, hey, I'm on rum lemonade again.
Well, hey, yeah. So, John, because you completely missed the point, you've made some hobby do's and don'ts.
Yeah, I mean, did we have 2 ideas here, or did I just miss the point completely?
No.
Okay.
Mark was very clear when he explained what we were supposed to be doing.
Okay, cool. I mean, maybe that's why I found this so difficult to do. But anyway, I thought we were going to talk about hobbies, do's and don'ts, because there are some things that I thought maybe people would want to know.
We all
Do's and
approach
don'ts
this
wise.
shit differently anyway, so that's all.
Sure. So
it is. And whilst our painting setups was the request from Patreon, we see your setup, unless you've got a different hidden one, John, we see your setup most Thursdays, every Saturday. Anyway, don't we?
you do.
So
My
if you want to
setup
see back setup, you can watch his painting streams on Saturday nights.
Yeah, and the thing that's out of focus on Saturday night is just a complete mess because I've got kids and I never have time to tidy this room. So let's check out you guys' painted setups. That'll be more fun. And in the
We'll
meantime,
do that later.
you can see some of the do's and don'ts that I maybe came up with, and you guys can shoot them down because you probably think that I'm an idiot, and most people think I'm an idiot anyway. So let's start with
Is it because
my
you missed
do's
the
and
points?
don'ts.
It's not just you; it's all of us, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Do number
Okay.
1: paint red.
So this is a do, but it also says don't. So just to keep you on your toes, don't spend money on expensive tools. And I think that I actually have seen other YouTubers review the new Games Workshop tools that they're doing now. I bought some of the older tools, such as like their mold line remover and stuff like that. I generally think that those like $20 tools you can do stuff on your own for a fraction of the price. So unless you
I own a Citadel Vice.
Okay.
Wow.
And how much did that cost you?
Fuck knows, but it's utterly worthless.
Probably like a 5 or 20 years
It
ago.
won't attach.
Maybe.
It's supposed to sucker onto things, but it doesn't.
Yeah, so it is worthless. I own the Citadel mold line remover tool, which I don't even know where it fucking is, and I just use an old hobby knife. You know, so it's like, yeah, I think for the most part, I think just don't rush out and buy the most expensive tools. I bought a drill on eBay for about £8. I've had it for like 5 years. I guess if you want recommendations for cheaper tools, you can probably put a question in the comments, so we can probably link you to some cheaper tools, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just go to a hardware store as well. Get like a small white tile or something. A craft knife is easy enough to get from there. Clippers, like you say. Yeah, absolutely. They'll do the purpose perfectly well.
Cool. So at least my first one, I thought it was a don't.
Mine
Is
are
actually
like £25 Redgrass ones, and I recommend them later.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, then
don't buy shitty tools. I think is part of it. Like the Citadel ones that are massively overpriced and worse than the old version.
I suppose to be ever so slightly fair to them, they're convenient and they're all in one place as a hobby supply for people who are new and getting into Games Workshop and just want to be able to go to a place that sells all the stuff they want in one go and buy things. But
as opposed to like Element Games, where they could use our affiliate link and buy better tools for less money.
Yeah,
I like that.
That was smooth. I thought
that was the smoothest one you've done. Yeah,
very good.
Okay,
well done.
Take your time with your models is number 2. It's an expensive hobby. There's no need to rush. If there is a slow painter award, then I'm sorry, boys. I fucking won it. You know that I am the slowest painter of everybody, but I don't think I'm a good painter. I'm a slow painter. I'm a precise painter. But every single time I go to events, people always say to me, like, I really like how you've painted your Blood Angels. And, like, I know people that are way better painters than me. But either people are just being nice to me, but I genuinely think people actually, if you take your time with the models, I think it pays off. So I would much rather be a slow painter. I don't think there's any need to rush.
Yeah, time is all it takes to get a finish that you'd be proud of in the end. Absolutely.
I also think take notes as you paint things, especially if you don't revisit units for a while. This probably ties into me being slow. If I'm going to paint some tactical marines, I'm not going to paint any more for a year or 2 years' time. I want to take a note of the colours that I used, because otherwise how the hell am I going to remember in 18 months' time? That is one of the most important things, I think, if you're starting out, if you want consistency.
I'm going to jump in there. I was just trying to find mine, but I actually have a journal, just a cheap exercise book. And whenever I paint something, I record what paints I've used, what order I've used. I've used a mix, roughly the kind of mix that I've used and what finish I've used. And that's partially because I paint things over a very long period of time, but also because of my when I'm doing commissions for people, sometimes someone will phone up and go, "Oh, you know, you made me that army 2 years ago. Can you paint me this unit to go with that army you painted me 2 years ago?" I'm like, yes, because I wrote down at the time exactly what I was. I was going to show it to you, but it's fallen down the back of the bloody desk. But yeah, it is really, really useful. Because you might even just go to do something else a couple of years later. You might think, oh, shit, how did I get a really nice purple colour? Where did that come from on whatever model? It's useful just to have a little note somewhere of how you did it. Yeah. So techniques are worth noting down in that book as well.
Well, so that's a great hobby tip. That's one of the top ones. The next one I like to do is this: what I tell everybody that tells me they're struggling with motivation on hobby is like just to dedicate some time to each week. You know, like I always say to people, like, you go to work every day. You know, you don't need motivation to go to work, right? You have to go to work. So you just set the time where you have the hobby. And usually, if you're not in the mood for hobby, because there's definitely nights where I'm tired, you know, I've had a long day at work, the kids have been a nightmare. Once you sit down and actually get going for 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm really enjoying this. But the getting started was the hardest part. So I have got a plug-in here for Tony streams on is it a Monday night now you're streaming?
Yeah, so I stream on it's a Monday night. I stream normally. It's not every week, but it's most weeks. And then of course we've got yours on the Saturday
Yeah, exactly. So
And
if
some
you
Thursdays
need
as well.
a time to if you don't want to hobby alone, then join me or Tony. Come hobby along. We do hobby pretty much every week, and we don't. I'm sure there's Mondays where you're fucking exhausted and you think you don't want to do hobby, but once you get into it and it starts flowing, then you have fun with it.
I enjoy streaming. I find because I've decided that I'm going to stream, then I've got to sit down and do 2 hours of painting.
Something.
But I get a surprising amount done.
Yeah. I mean, 2 hours every week is 100 hours in a year. That's the way I look at it. So if you just do it one, if you think what you can actually get done in 100 hours, and 2 hours a week is not a lot. Fuck off. Yeah, I know. I get 100 hours models finished in 100 hours.
It took me 100 hours to do the Thunderhawk. I'm not joking. That's literally how long it took.
Okay, so you can paint a Thunderhawk if
Bloody
you just
hell.
hobby once a week. I also think you should get yourself some nice hard storage from like a hardware store. You can get like trays that you can put models in. You can also get like little ones with lots of compartments. They'll be infinitely cheaper than like buying expensive storage. And here's the thing, like, see if you store models on shelves, there's nothing worse, I think, than shitloads of dusty models. Because, I mean, you can clean them, sure. Mark's got nice cabinets behind him with glass windows.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go a step further and do that. But I just hate having loads of models out on, like, a table or a desk, and when you come to them, it's like, oh, they're fucking covered in dust, and can't be bothered with it.
Shout
Go
out for
alongside
the Billy
that.
bookcase from IKEA.
Oh well, I mean, these are
glass.
IKEA glass cases when you get right down to
I've
it.
just bought an IKEA display cabinet as well, but I've got to put my fancy shit in.
The cases I use for my armies these days are they're branded really useful boxes. I get them from Hobbycraft. I line the bottom with a sticky ferrous sheet of material that any magnet will attach to, and that's how I take my models around these days. And it's easy enough to store them in there as well.
A lot of people use that magnet trick. Yeah, so I think buying a box like that, because those boxes aren't expensive, those really useful boxes.
£7-8 a box, if that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just much better than, because this where we play on stream, they have all Andrew's models out behind, like on shelves behind me like this, and every model's fucking covered in dust. It's just, I mean, it just pissed me off so much if they were my models.
It upsets me when you put a lot of work into it that you then have to try and dust it off, and then you damage the basing, and it's just annoying.
Okay, if you don't use brush shampoo, there's a pretty obvious one. You probably should use brush shampoo because it'll make your brushes last a hell of a lot longer.
I never used to until I got some brushes that I give a shit about.
Darcy Sopal brushes, was it?
Yeah, and they came with brush soap as well, so that was kind of helpful.
And I was going to say, and they probably last 10 times longer because you use the soap with them, do they?
And I don't use them anywhere near as often as the other ones because these are my special brushes. I don't just like break them out willy-nilly. But yeah,
nice. I also think if you're making GW products, I think plastic glue is so much better than super glue. How do you guys feel on that? Would you prefer plastic glue to super glue?
It depends what I'm gluing. If it's plastic to plastic, I will always use plastic glue or poly cement in every situation. Because you're right, the bond is just better. If it's anything else, then super glue. Resin super glue takes brilliantly. I try not to use metal stuff these days because it's just, the slightest knock will break the bond of the super glue from the metal to metal or metal to plastic, and it annoys.
It's not quite as bad as it used to be. The glue's a bit better than it was when we used to build them in the 90s. That was a nightmare. Remember that?
I do remember the crappy super glue. So you can get some really good super glue. I like the Gorilla glue. I don't know if you guys have used that.
If I'm doing anything metal these days, I'm always going to pin it one way or another. Just to add that little bit of extra structure to it because I can afford to take time and do it.
But if you're buying like
so few
standard GW kits, I think it pays dividends to invest in cheap. Like you can get that Revolute. Do you know the one? This one? You seen this before? It's like $2.99. And each tub lasts like a year, even if you buy a lot of models. And I just prefer it.
So I use little army painter tubs of plastic glue that I get off Amazon.
And then finally,
I used Hamir, but
same thing. Yeah, cool.
The last do, which is a really important do, is that you must always remember just to paint the underside of your models. There's one heretic in this room that doesn't do that.
What kind of Philistine? Or
who wanders around flipping models upside down to look up the skirts?
I mean, okay.
I mean, if you do that, John, and that's why you're worried about it, because wherever it is that you take your models, people really like looking up their crotch plates to see what's going on up there.
You live in Scotland, you know, it's only to be expected.
You know that we did do a poll on the channel, and people did say that painting your underside of your models was more important than drilling the gun barrels. Yeah, you remember that poll, right? Okay, cool. So that's my hobby do's. Hopefully you take some advice from that.
Yeah.
My hobby don'ts.
There's a ninth hobby do I'd like to add to this, which is drill your barrels.
That's actually in the hobby
drill your
don'ts.
fucking barrels.
It's on number
That's
5.
disgusting.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Fine.
It's disgusting.
Hobby don'ts. Don't use expensive GW brushes. You can use their synthetic ones. I've used their synthetic ones actually quite a lot for base coatings, but I've spent quite a lot of money on like their artificer brushes. Like I think they're like £15 or £16, and I bought like 2 of them, and honestly they lasted like 1 paint session. So I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong, but my experience with the expensive GW brushes has not been great, I guess.
They do make an artificer brush, which I think, but I could be wrong on this, they used to be OEM by Da Vinci, and they were very good, but they are a little bit overpriced. You can buy the same brushes kind of OEM much cheaper. They are good, but you're paying for that. You're paying sort of £30 a brush for those. Okay,
well, the 2 that I bought, I quite like the Games Workshop synthetics ones. I'd recommend them. They're cheap. They're like £5 a brush. If you want to do like hundreds of base coats, they're absolutely fine. The artificer ones I don't recommend, I guess. I also said don't run out and buy a million colours of paint. When I came back to the hobby, it's almost like you go into the store and you see all these paints. I bought hundreds of pots of paints, and like honestly I have 50 that I've probably never opened. And Tony's got a million that he's never opened.
I've already got about 200 different paints down there.
That you've never opened, or you have opened, or you very rarely use. You have opened.
Well, some you use a lot, and some you don't use very often. Depends what project you're working on.
A few years ago, I bought one of their big paint sets in a box deals where they were doing for Christmas, where you get like one of every paint in a carry case and all this sort of thing.
They used to do the mega paint set, didn't they?
Yeah,
that was really
it
good.
was one of those.
It was £100, I remember.
I don't use most of them, but I value having every single paint that I've got, just in case I need that little sort of gradation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it depends on what you do. If you're always painting the same things and you just buy good paints to do that thing, if you're more like myself or some other hobbyists where you paint a lot of random stuff, then you end up needing quite a lot of random paints. I
don't like mixing. I don't like blending and making mixes because I can never guarantee getting the same thing, even if I write the recipes down. So I'd prefer to just use the colour as it is. But that's just me.
Fair enough. Yeah, so I guess because I only just do the one army, and I guess I do the 3 colour schemes, I probably just need like 40 paints. So like if you can figure out what those 40 paints are earlier, you can probably save yourself a lot of money, because I literally have like 50 paints I've never opened. So maybe again that's just me playing one army, but I guess that's my advice, and it kind of leads on to the next topic as well.
Maybe
which
if you
is
had an Age of Sigmar army you wanted to paint, maybe you'd use more of them.
Correct. Don't give yourself a giant project as a new / novice hobbyer, because I think that some people see these giant projects and then get demotivated to not even start them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, like, as a newer person, I probably just buy a box, paint it. Don't buy another box till you've painted it.
Perfect starting points would be things like a 500-point army, a kill team, a Blood Bowl team, you know, as Tony decided to... At least I did enough of his camera.
I'm still in. That camera's driving me fucking mental.
All right, my next point would
It's behaved so well for months, and then suddenly
don't
focus happens to other people.
Be scared to try new skills or techniques, right? Because like the way I see it is like I am very much a battle ready painter, but like every time I try something new, assuming that I've been painting 2 months and then I try something new, and I've been painting 2 months again and try something new. I always feel like when I try something new, if I have a plan for it, I can always end up with something that's quite good without going too technical.
Test models are a brilliant thing. They can be hard to justify if you're like, I bought this unit here and I bought this unit here and these are going to go in my army. But if you can afford to get just some like cheap models that you don't care about, that maybe they're a few generations old, nobody really plays them very much.
Can I offer a quick tip for
Marines, and just test
shit out. Worth doing.
Test how the contrast paints work, all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So it's well worth doing is looking out for things like the Conquest magazines and Imperium magazines, things like that, because often they do like the first issues of those or earlier or back issues for sort of £2 or £3, and if you don't care what the models are, you just whatever you can get a load of those of. I've got loads of random like Hellblasters and shit.
Or Space Marine Reavers or other pieces of crap that nobody
just
wants.
Things that I'm not going to use. Monopose models that I just use for testing color schemes. I've got stacks of them. I've got a whole drawer beside my table.
Yeah.
No, that's very fair to say. I think the Conquest magazines actually are a great place to get something that you could test like that. Sometimes you could even go into GW Store and they'll give you a free model too.
Yeah. They'll often give you a free model if you're new to the hobby, or you can convince them that you're new to the hobby.
Or you just ask them nicely and don't be a dick about it.
Yeah, there is that as well. They've got them to give away.
Yeah, they have like I think I got like an Age of Sigmar one or a random Primaris Marine, something like that. And then finally, yes.
Well, they always have the model of the month. So even if you are an older painter and you ask them for the model of the month, if they've got any in stock, they will let you have whatever it is. I think the last one, it was like a Votan or whatever it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I went in and made sure I got a Votan model, so I've got it sitting in my collection of the all the different armies of 40k.
Yeah.
And then finally would be definitely don't drill your gun barrels. Because that's a real fucking waste of time, isn't it?
I mean, who's going to have a look at the tiny little drilled barrel of a gun, eh?
Who's going to not notice the giant like flat end of all your heavy bolters?
As opposed to not noticing that you haven't painted the tag tray.
You can't see with
you
your
just get
eyes.
a paintbrush and you put a little black dot on the end of your gun. There you go.
I mean, we've got different standards in this hobby, apparently. maybe
He's trying to stare
down. If I was writing your report, that's what it'd say. It's like,
I was going to say, I mean, maybe people in Scotland just have more, common sense and paint the whole model.
Free time.
Nothing else to do up there, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Bit of a wasteland.
All right, shots fired.
Too cold. I'll just sit here and paint the underside of my models.
Cool. That's my hobby do's and don'ts. I don't know how good it was. I actually find it quite hard to do this.
Fair enough. All right. Are we swapping to my one now? Is that how this is working?
Yeah, yes. I think so. It's time for some painting and hobby setups. So I'm going to quit myself.
Right.
There we go. You can all see us if I'm going to stay in focus for more than 30 seconds. Doesn't matter now.
Well, hey, there we go. Excellent. Right.
Because Mark F is presenting.
Ooh, yeah, we like that shit, don't we? Or something. But before then, I just wanted to take a little time out to point this stuff out, because John recently had a rant on the Discord about how he might have missed this and hadn't found out about it, despite the fact that I shared it on the Discord and tagged him for it in the channel days previous. So, if you're a fan of Space Marine Blood Angel fiction, there's a book coming out all about Sanguinius some point in November that Amazon seems to think is going to be like really right at the tail end of November. And there's going to be a special edition for it seems, which if you want, you're going to want to make sure you be there for like 10 minutes before 10 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time or whenever the pre-orders go live, and have your money ready and saved and all this sort of stuff, and try and be one of the lucky few who gets the book. I don't know about this one. I've got a load of special editions. I don't know if I really need another one, which is stupid, really, because
it doesn't seem like the most exciting special edition, does it? It just looks like it's got a fancy cover. And the cover's not that fancy. It's just not got any writing on it.
I was never that much of a real big interest in the Primarch series until I started noticing that they were letting go really interesting bits of lore and secrets and retcons that you never knew existed previously. So I'm kind of curious as to what they're going to let go about Sanguinius in this book. Yeah. But yeah, if you're a fan of fiction, if you're a fan of special editions, this is going to be coming up some point in the next
or you could just go to
4 weeks or so.
Can I
ask
a question?
You can ask.
Chris,
can't promise an answer.
Right, I'm not sure if that's how you're saying it. Have you read any other 40k books by him? Because I have not, personally.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
Probably, but if I'm honest, I don't normally pay that much attention.
But to the author, you normally don't pay attention.
Well, not with especially Horus Heresy and that, because I just sort of go one to one.
True.
I imagine he's written at least one, if not more, of a number of short stories that I've read over the years, but it's not a name I'm massively familiar with his work.
He's not one of the ones that I look for. Like, I look for Sandy Mitchell books because I absolutely love the Typhus Pain series.
The name isn't Guy Haley, who's currently synonymous with Blood Angels, so which is a shame.
Yeah.
But anyway,
he's busy writing the next book. Thank you so much for sharing.
Here's hoping.
I'm glad that you
keep your eyes open for a special edition coming. Then you can complain when you miss it, so that'll be fun.
I will complain. Yeah, sure.
No worries. This is my hobby desk and setup. I set it up over a few months once COVID lockdown started because I was redoing my whole work from home setup. So I took time to reset up this stuff as I was going along, bought a new table for it and got everything sort of set up how I like it and ready, which was quite nice.
Love your racks.
They're nice racks, aren't they? I'll have a close up on those in a minute. So the actual desk itself it's a flat wooden surface piled with shit. You got the little shelf attached to the wall behind it, which is what I've got the paint racks on top of, as well as a few models that I'm working on at any given moment. It's just stuff on a table, ultimately, when you get right down to it.
A lovely cup of green tea there as well.
Sorry?
A lovely cup of green tea there as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's the green from doing the bases of my Blood Bowl team towards the end of last week.
But yeah, importantly, what book are you reading, Mark?
I'm not reading that book at the moment. That book is just there because I've borrowed it and I need to read it at some point. That is what the it's a book about the guy who played Shang-Chi in the Shang-Chi movie. And it's currently covered in Star Wars models. That's what the book is.
I don't know who that is.
He's an actor.
What Star Wars models? Is it Legion or it looks like
it's
Imperial
Legion.
Assault? Is it Legion? Is it?
No, it's not Legion. It is Imperial Assault. You're absolutely right. It's models from the Imperial Assault Jabba's Realm expansion.
Oh yeah, because you just bought that expansion. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the models being sprayed up and getting ready to be painted, and there's Obi-Wan in there and there's Darth Maul in there because they were cheap on Amazon Prime at the time. So
I love Imperial Assault, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna play some more of that.
We'll play when you visit me.
Won't have time with all the many other things we're planning to do, I suppose, but it's entirely possible. Those are my paints.
It's going to take us a while to find that Terminator and burn it.
So the majority of this is the stuff from that big ass paint set I bought years ago. You've got some inks in the corner, you've got some contrast in the bottom middle, you got a bit of microsol and microset at the top, you've got some texture paints.
What's the one that's separated 3 from the bottom right?
That is Tesseract Glow.
Oh right, okay.
It's nice paint that I bought some of that to use. Some of my students were building Necrons because they got the starter set. Yeah. For 40k, and you get some Necrons in it. And if you want a really easy way, and you're not much of a confident painter, Tesseract Glow, just slopping that over some white, will give you such a fantastically easy kind of basic OSL effect on Necrons. It's great.
Totally agree. It's very good. I do want to get one of those 80 to 100 quid sort of mixer shaker things as well. So that'll just like make things huge amounts easier at some point. But it's just getting around to justifying spending 80 to 100 quid on a paint shaker. Yeah,
that's mine.
Like one of those. That's exactly right.
They really cost 100 quid.
RRP 100.
You can get them cheaper if you don't mind getting them out of like Alibaba or Wish.
They're also
for
cheaper
tattoo
models,
ink
which
shakers.
frankly aren't as good. But the one that's worthwhile is meant to be like 100 quid RRP, and it's currently like
I think I paid
80 to 85 around Black Fridays and deals and things. So keep your eyes open for one of those.
Also got your Warhammer Plus Assassin. I see him sneaking in there.
Yeah, absolutely. He's in there as well. He'll get a bit more work done.
I need to build mine. I've still got him sitting around.
Yeah, I've still got mine sitting around too.
So that's how I keep my shit brushes. They're in a cup. They're color coded because that's the way GW does them, and I don't really pay much.
Why are they the wrong way up?
What do you mean? Why are they the wrong way up?
Why would you put the bristles down?
Because they're inside those little plastic sheets, and so it's when you finish painting with them, they're face down, so the water will drain out the bristles and the ferrule.
Yeah, it won't go into the ferrule
bottom of the glass.
Dirty water.
Yeah.
But
So
if you
that's how
haven't
you
got
do
one of
it.
those little plastic things, store them flat, not like that, because you'll have some really fucked
Yeah,
brushes.
and then you got the ones that don't have plastic things on, and they're just like dry brushes anyway. Very rarely get used. So I don't.
I've got one of
use
those big
those
Citadel
huge
giant
dry
brushes.
brushes
It's
as well.
quite useful sometimes.
Yeah, on occasion. And then you've got my Spanky brushes, the Artis Opus sets that I got through Kickstarter, and are amazing. And I use them nowhere near as much as I probably should. Really, I should probably use them more often to get more use out of them. But they're really, really good. They come with some brush soap and all sorts of other stuff in them. Yeah, they're Spanky. I
I
like
think
them.
I've literally got the same 2 sets as you, but just different designs.
Yeah, the dry brushes in particular are exceptionally good. I do like them. And those little glass bead things in there, I bought a bag of 300 miniature glass beads to use as paint shakers, and every one of my paint pots has got one of them in as well. So whenever I shake them, it helps mix them up, which will go well when I get that electric.
Try and steer
shaker
clear of
thing.
some of the metal ones because they can go rusty and ruin your paint. The glass
Yep.
ones that Mark's got there, I think, are better. And they're a bit lighter, they don't mix quite as well. But other than that, they are just better.
That is exactly why I chose them to be glass beads for that exact same purpose as well. Yeah, same point. Oh yeah, sorry.
I was going to say that's clever, and then right into your hardware store thing that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So this is my corner of generally useful stuff. I use toothpicks all the time. The pennies are in there so that I super glue them underneath the bases of my models to weight them down. Because otherwise, plastic models are a bit light and they can slide around fairly easier. I can also glue the magnets to the bottom of the pennies so that they'll be flush to the surface of whatever I want to magnetize them or grip to, the same bottom of the boxes. There's some magnets attached to that little metallic squash bottle up there, PVA glue. The bog roll is there for dry brushing on whenever I need to, or cleaning up paint spills, which never ever happen, honest gov, yeah. And the little black container's got some little magnifying glasses, little fold out glasses that are the magnifying in the lenses, which is quite handy and useful. The hardware thing itself is a bits container, which is what I use it for, which is useful. It may look organized. It's relatively organized. It's not as organized as you think, but it's certainly a start on being organized. This is the next stage of the organized that I am with my bits, which is another one of those really useful boxes I mentioned earlier with a couple of inserts in there. So I put heads in, melee weapons, shoulder pads, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, best way I can to try and keep them organized. Yeah. Some wire that I use for pinning stuff with, wire cutters. That's a little tub of bio strip that I use for paint stripping things with, which was really, really useful, but can melt resin. Don't use it on stone. It's really good on metal. It's pretty good on plastic, but will melt the fuck out of Forge World resin stuff really, really, really well. Behind me in my display cabinets, I've got a drawer full of transfer sheets where I keep all of them for when I need them. At some point, I very rarely use them, but I like to have them for when I do want them and need them. And this is just going to prove that I'm not that organised with my bits, because
it's hard to organise all these spare sprues, though, isn't it?
Fucking hell, it really is.
It's almost impossible. I just have a box under my desk where there's just like 100 sprues like that. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of those piles is going to be Sanguinary Guard bits, and half of one of the piles is going to be Vanguard veteran sprues, and God knows what the rest of it all is. I'll go through it at some point when I've literally got nothing better to do and clip it all out so it's all organised.
I do it when the wife makes me watch television. It's not even a joke. So we'll sit there and she's like, we'll just watch a movie. And I'll be like, do I have to? And then when she's like, yes, I'm like, all right, well, I'll take some sprues and I'll sit with little snippers and just snip them into the pots while we're watching the.
Fair enough. So yeah, that's my hobby setup. That's basically it.
That's funny that you say that, though, Tony, because my wife gives me such a hard time for, like, you haven't watched this, you haven't watched this, you haven't watched this movie. And I was like, yeah, because I had a fucking computer and I played Warhammer. Like, when was there time to watch movies when I was a kid, you know? Like, and she would just go through, like, 100 movies. I was like, not seen it. This is probably why I've not seen Event Horizon.
Fair enough.
So
I've got too much ADHD to sit down and watch like TV show or anything like that. That's one of the reasons I haven't bothered with Disney Plus, because there's no fucking way that I'll be able to sit down and watch a load of stuff. Within like 15 minutes, I'm like, gotta do something else, gotta do something else.
I like the stories. I like the connection. I like the experiences and the being somewhere else and being able to see it and hear it.
Do you know what? I like one thing that this is going to sound so random is like I like the fact that you have a bin in your hobby space, because I always end up with shit all over, bits of sprues, you know, bits off all those GW paints. You peel the paint and they get stuck in the rims. Just ends up all over the table.
Can you see that little bit of green just in the inside of the bin there? That's from me cleaning out the Snotling green tub, so that it would close after I finished using it from doing those Blood Bowl bases I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. So that's I feel like that's a stupid takeaway, but I need a bin in my hobby space.
I'm surprised you haven't got one. I've got one. I assumed everyone had a bin.
And the matches for when you've lost it and you're like, fuck this guy, he's gonna burn.
No, one of the things I find relaxing is a flame, so I have candles next to me most of the time, just to keep them lit and yeah, it keeps me calm. I like it. It's nice.
Smoking big old fat cigars.
Yeah.
No,
as weird as this might sound, I have never in my life smoked a cigarette or a cigar. Not once.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wish I could say I haven't.
That's fair. My parents used to do it, and as a kid, I didn't like it. I didn't like the smell. I didn't know how it looked, so I've just never gotten into it.
You do find that quite a lot, I think.
And since then, I've since discovered how much it costs, and went, I'm really glad I didn't get addicted to smoking, because then I'd spend so much money on that.
I think you get that a lot
on things I like.
Yeah, my grandparents smoked, but neither of my parents were, because they grew up with it and they hated the smell.
Yeah.
And I think that seems quite a common pattern.
That's it. That's me.
Very professional looking setup, Mark. I like it.
Cheers.
I'm going to feel like embarrassed now because
disgusting. The only thing it's missing is there's no palette there, because I tend to not use a palette because I tend to not do mixing.
So do you water your paint down with?
If I need to water my paint down, I water it down on that green cutting mat that was in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Which is why it's covered in shit, because it's been painted stuff and watered down on over the years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go, Tony. What we got?
Right. Okay. So, on mine side differently as well. There's my painting area.
Oh, look how clean this is.
Oh yeah. Professional, you might say.
I don't like clutter when I'm painting. And actually,
those,
I need to use those speakers. They annoy the shit out of me.
Chunky
they used to be on the wall
speakers there for. Do you use them while you're painting?
Yeah.
You play
well, so many years ago, before
blow your fucking ears out when you're sitting there painting.
Before I was a top YouTube influencers, and a crack physicist, I was my degree was in sound engineering, and they were one of my sets of monitoring speakers that I used for that, and I still do occasionally because I do some stuff for the like the local radio station and that. And I like them because the sound is really nice and crisp and it's nice and clean. They're not properly set up yet because I need to get them on the wall, because you get a little bit of stuff off the table that nobody except me is going to notice. Okay. But yeah, so I do use them a little bit. If I'm listening to music in here or something, then that's what's going to be doing it. They're behind me at the moment. And I haven't sorted them out to put them on the walls. So yeah, that is pretty much it. It's not very exciting. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. Along that windowsill. Well, in fact, I've got a better version of doing that. There we go.
Hold on a second. Just go back a moment. If speakers get something for being sat on a surface,
yes,
wouldn't they get something from hanging off a wall as well?
You put them away from the wall and sides as well. So there's a gap. Because think of it, right. The sound's going to come out where the cone is, yeah?
Yep.
If you've got a flat surface directly in front of it, it's going to come out there, it's going to hit that flat surface, and there's all sorts of bouncing off. Okay?
Right. Okay. So it's not about the contact from the speaker to the table.
Not so much. I mean, you can put foam pads in there to prevent that as well.
Okay.
But mostly you just get some funny reverb things going on.
All right. Okay. Sorry,
Okay.
I apologise.
So, yeah, right. This is it. You can see I started labelling it and I got bored. This is sort of some things that are on my painting desk that actually matter. Something that I think is really important is a decent lamp. It doesn't have to be a dedicated hobby lamp like this. If I don't know if you can be able to see it, but that is just an angle poise lamp. And for a long time, I just used the daylight bulb.
Yeah, I've got an angle poise that I've
it's not
got
real
a
angle
daylight
poise. It comes
LED.
from IKEA, but anyway, so that's quite handy. I've got my vortex mixer. They are expensive. They are a bit of a luxury pick. You can just shake it, but they do a bit of they do a really good job, and they speed things up. Something that I find extremely.
They save your wrist.
They do, because you can only do that for so long before it gets sore.
Mm-hmm. I've heard. Yeah.
I mean, in Scotland we've got pretty good stamina for that, so yeah, we don't need those expensive mixers.
Down here in England, we don't need stamina for that.
Yeah, if it's over in 30 seconds, we're good.
No, you just haven't got to climb over the nearest mountain to find somebody else.
We're going to get so fucked up next time.
It's all right, we're not monetized. So something that I found really, really incredibly useful is a hairdryer. Now, that's just a cheapy travel hairdryer.
That's just going to get so much fucking
Sorry?
That's just because you get so much hair.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nothing to do with painting. It's just to do with...
But if you're doing a lot of techniques, you really need to wait for each layer to dry before you try and put another one on. You're going to tear the paint and stuff like that. So actually just having a hairdryer on your desk, you can quickly dry things off, is incredibly useful.
You don't find that the force from the hairdryer and the hot air being ejected from it at high speed just like deforms the paint and pushes it around, so it changes the surface. On it
that you can push it around with a hairdryer. You've got too much paint on the model.
Okay, fair enough.
It shouldn't be bubbly.
I've literally never
sorry, I'm being a bit
for fear of that.
I'm being a bit facetious there, but that's not fair. Because like some contrast and stuff are, but you don't want paint pooling, and the only time it's going to move around is if it's pooling. So if it is doing that, you need to be wicking some of that away, really, or you're going to start obscuring detail and all sorts of horrible things. You're going to get nasty coffee stains and type marks. We don't want that.
Okay. All right.
A couple of other things then. So I've got 2 water pots.
But one water
reason
pot
for that is because one water pot is not enough. No, it's actually more than that. If you use metallic paints, you will leave little metallic pigment flakes in your water pot.
Right.
When you then do a non-metallic paint, you'll make slightly glittery models occasionally.
Makes sense.
So you've got one water pot for metallics and one water pot for not metallics. You don't need 2 because you could, revolutionary, empty it. But if you're one of these people that I do sometimes, and I might hop backwards and forwards and all over the place while I'm doing something, it's just I've got 2 there. And I don't need to worry about emptying that all out. On the windowsill in the background, you can see I've got some paintbrushes. We'll talk more about those later, but they're just there within easy reach for me to grab different marks as I'm needing things. There's a cutting mat, it's the same as marks. It's handy for when you're modeling and whatnot. Then I've got my wet palette. I use the XL model, the extra large one, because I find the small one too small, especially if you've got lots of mixes going on, because I do like to mix paint and I do a lot of blending, and it's handy to keep being able to jump backwards and forwards rather than get a pot off the shelf. And often when I'm doing a longer session, or I know I've got a lot of things to do, I will start my session by looking at what paints I'm going to use, and I'll put them on the wet palette and then work from there rather than looking around for paints.
Fair enough.
I also keep a glass palette on my desk. It's basically just a pane of glass. It's in a box. It is actually it's a wet palette. It's an insert. And then you can put the lid on if you want to come back to it later. That's especially useful for things that don't go on a wet palette, like metallics, because they can leak through the membrane into the sponge, which you don't really want. But also if you're doing things like oil paints and stuff like that, or heavy body acrylics that you might not want to, it's mostly the oil paints and the odd metallic that I'll use on there. Rather than anything else. So I've got 2 palettes to make up for Mark not having one. And then lastly, I've got my airbrush and a little airbrush cleaning pot. They're quite useful there because it's a stand and it just means you can blow dead paint or water or cleaner or whatever straight into that at my desk. Not mentioned is the fact that I'm next to a window. That's so I can get a bit of ventilation if I need to do some airbrushing. and stuff at the table. So yeah, that's my sort of like general setup.
Cool.
And then rather than sort of going around looking at things in detail, I've sort of split I've got a couple more pictures, and I've split them up into, first of all, my paint. So I do a lot of painting, and it's not really limited to any one particular thing. It's certainly not limited to Warhammer or anything like that. And I've just sort of picked out from my collection of hundreds of paints, a couple of my favourite sort of like paints and painty things.
Okay.
Now, if I can do this, it's not going to let me. That's fine. I was going to try and highlight this, but anyway. Oh, don't that one. We want that one. So, going from the top left, then. So the first sort of four you can see there are my Chimera paints. Now, I'm a big fan of Chimera paint. They are mostly, apart from some of their artist signature blend lines, they are single pigment, which is important if you're going to do blending or mixing, and they are very, very matte. The black and white in particular are excellent, but there's also a very nice warm yellow, which I find has got decent. All yellows are transparent. You don't really get any kind of truly opaque yellows, but it's a particularly good one, easy to work with. And the magenta, which is amazing doing shadows and that when you want to add a bit of interest and stuff. So that's my four Chimera paints.
Hold on.
I thought magenta didn't exist.
How can you have a magenta paint when it doesn't exist?
Because I'm super special.
Okay, just checking.
Just call it pink.
Did you see that comment? Someone. No, it's not. It's magenta.
Someone subscribe
pink
because
is
we
what you
talked
get when
about
you mix red
magenta.
with
Yes.
Magenta's a shared hallucination. You can't actually see it. It's not really there.
Yes.
Now,
yes. Saw the comment from the person who subscribed just for the magenta. That was awesome.
That was my
Like
favourite
that.
comment ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, at the back there, you can also see I've got a couple of Vallejo paints. They're all good. If I was going to recommend somebody to start buying paints, I would always suggest buy one of the Vallejo paint sets. Incredible value for money. They have a huge range, and it's very consistent paint. But it does have a bit of a satin finish, which I'm not the biggest fan of. The two paints that I've picked out there are... what is it? So that is Duraluminium, which is one of their metal color line. Now, these are alcohol based, which makes them extremely runny. They're incredible through your airbrush, although a bit of a pig to clean.
Okay.
And they do work quite well with a normal brush as well, but they're very runny. They take a little bit of getting used to. Don't put them on your wet palette because they'll separate immediately. And the other one is a color that I do find myself using, and it is Vallejo model color Ivory. And I think it's because it's an off-white, it's incredible just to mix with other things when you want to brighten them up for doing highlights or whatever. It's really, really great for that. In the row in front of them, I've got the Dirty Down Weathering liquids. Now, they are fantastic. They're Rust, Verdigris, and the Moss one. The Moss one I've found less useful than the Rust, which is incredible, and the Verdigris as well is quite nice. They're a water-based thing, which means they dissolve in water. So you've got to be really, really careful with them, because if you try and varnish or anything afterwards, it's very easy to destroy it. So they're kind of like your last step, but they're super matte and very, very realistic. You have to like warm them up a bit and use them. Really recommend those. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Sorry. Then I've got a couple of Tamiya paints that I'm quite fond of. The Tamiya Black is great through the airbrush and very, very dark. Not shown there is the white because I've literally just run it out, and I use that when I'm doing my value sketches. Before I dig into doing things, especially when I'm using transparent paints, I'll do a value sketch with black and white. And the Tamiya paint is incredible for the airbrush. That you can thin it down so much. And next to that is X27, which is a clear red paint. And that's, if you want to do a candy effect, you can do it with contrast paint and it works great. But if you want to do, I think the best candy effect, so that's where you do like a clear coat over a metallic. The Tamiya paints, if you can get the hang of them, because you've got to thin them down with special thinner, you can see it in the background actually, and things like that, are by far the most consistent to get the best kind of candy effects, even if they are a bit of a pig to work with. Then I've got a couple of pigment powders. That is the Rust and Dark Earth ones. This is back when Forge World made some of their own stuff, but loads of companies do them, and they're what I use for my basing. In the middle there, I've got Scale 75. I've got 3 of their metallic colors, and that's black metal, decayed metal, and necro gold. And they're 3 metallics that if I'm going to do basically any kind of metallics on a model, they are my base point, depending on what I'm going for. If I'm going for gold, redder gold or coppers or anything like that, I'll use the decayed metal and the necro gold. And if I'm going for any kind of silver, that black metal is incredible. It's got a interesting finish, but it's very, very smooth. It's got incredible coverage, and they're a great starting point for doing metallics. Next to them, I've got a couple of the normal scale color paints. They're all pretty good, but they are difficult to use. Again, they use a gel medium. They're super matte. They can be a bit of a learning curve. When you do, you get some incredible finishes. The one that looks slightly different is the reddish one on the left of that trio, and that's actually just red ink. It's a crimson ink, which is what I use if I'm trying to do a lot of if I'm trying to do transparent over a gradient sketch. So I use my Thunderhawk I did with that. At the back there are a couple of Reaper paints. Now Reaper have got an interesting range of paints. They've got some that are a bit ropey. Remind me a little bit of Army Painter, which we'll see I haven't got any of. But their browns are really great. They're really, really good browns. It's a little bit like Rhinox Hide, the darker one on the right there. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a little bit more running and it goes on a little bit smoother. And I think that's really useful for doing parchments and texts and things like that. Then I've got a couple of Ammo by MIG paints, and that's their 2 pale greys. Again, they're nice because they're very liquidy. They go on with an airbrush well, and they're good, decent coverage. A lot of the other MIG paints, you want to be a little bit careful of. Their coverage is a bit shit in general, especially their black and their white. They're too runny. They're great for an airbrush, but they're crap for the normal brush. So I'll try and avoid them. Normal, then there's to the right of those, you've got some Citadel paints. I've picked up a couple of contrasts that I particularly like, and that's Talasar Blue and the new Bile Red.
I do like
the
Talasar
new
Blue.
Bile Red. Yeah, the new Bile Red is almost like a red ink, but incredibly bright. And if you want to go with kind of 2nd edition level bright Blood Angels, doing that over a nice kind of zenithal sketch or whatever, or value sketch, will give you a really good finish really quick, especially with the airbrush. Then there is an old edge paint. I think they just call it a normal layer paint now, but they used to do the range of edge paints, which was just really bright colours, and that's Baroth Blue, and I use that for my gems and the final little highlights for those. And then in the front, I've got a few oil paints that I'm rather fond of. This I use a lot. This is just a Winsor & Newton lamp black, which means it's got a little bit of a warmer black, and that is fantastic for doing over metallic-y stuff. It just adds a little bit of warmth to the black when you're doing oil washes and shading like that. Then we've got the oil brushes. That's these things. Now, these are by Ammo by MIG, and they're a great idea. They're a slightly pre-thinned oil paint, and rather than you having it and you making it up on your palette and so on and so forth, which is a little bit of a faff, they've actually got a brush built into it. I don't know how well that's going to come across. They've got a brush in the pot, so you can brush directly onto the model, and then you can use a bit of white spirits to do weathering effects or making shading, something like that, which makes really, really handy. Like pre-made oil is excellent there. And then the last one is just an oil wash that you can buy pre-made. I find it a little bit thin sometimes, but if I've just got a load of metallic bits on a model and I want to slap a bit of machinery or something like that, that's just oil wash grease from Scale Color, and that's just it's got to slap it on, rub it off the bits you want to keep shiny, and call it a day. It's like Nuln Oil, but good.
The amount of passion and detail and sheer different fucking paints you have staggers me, dude. It's amazing.
Right.
I would never think to go to this level of. I mean, all of my paints are Citadel.
All my Battle One are Citadel.
I can appreciate it's worth branching out for different effects for what you want, but I'm just more for the convenience style on that. And you're. I mean, if anybody doubted it before now, this is what an artist setup looks like.
I was going to say, this gives us a good contrast. It gives me and you at one end of the spectrum, Mark, happy with Citadel, able to get decent-looking results from Citadel, and then you can see what a passionate painter will do.
Absolutely.
There's also a difference in the kind of thing we're trying to do. It's like when we listened to your tips and that earlier, and you were saying earlier about taking your time on your models. Well, I almost never take my time on models. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, a lot of the work I do is for other people, which is I just haven't got that luxury. They'll say, I want this model by this time to this level. And that means I need to be able to get a good finish quickly. So the majority of my work is kind of what's the best effect I can get in the 2 hours I've got to do this model. Which is why I'm branching out to a lot of techniques to speed myself up. It's, you know, no joking aside, it's one of the reasons I don't paint the bottom models. Because if I've only got 2 hours, I'll spend that 2 hours making sure that the blend on his claw looks right for Yarrick. If you saw that on the
it's low
screen,
priority for
I'm worrying about what he looks like upside down. If I've got a bit of spare time, then sure. And that means that when I'm doing my own stuff, I'm very limited again in time. Now, I will take my time on some stuff. You can see in the background of that, that's me working on my Valdor model. And I've been doing that for a little while. And that's just something that I'm tickling over when I want some relaxation time and I want to waste 4 hours trying to paint a leg. But yeah, so it's the opposite end of the spectrum, kind of. Whilst I don't paint for a living, people are giving me money to do their things.
Yeah. No, very impressive.
Yeah, so that's just kind of the other end of the spectrum.
A little bit daunting,
before somebody in the comments
impressive.
says, have I tried Pro-Acryl paints? Yes, I've got some Pro-Acryl paints. I've got some down here. No, I don't like them. And that's nothing against the paint. The paint is of very high quality, and I understand why a lot of people like it. You'll notice a lot, apart from with the very exception of the couple of Citadel paints that I use, mostly contrast, and the couple of ammo paints, they're all extremely thick paints. I like, especially the Chimera and the Scale Color. If you put the Scale Color on the Chimera, you'll put a little pile like that, it will build up. It's extremely thick, and the reason for that is I can always thin it down, maybe with a bit of acrylic thinner, maybe with a bit of water or medium, whatever. And I can make it as thin as I want to do from a glaze. But what you can't do is make a thin paint thicker.
You heard it here first, folks. Tony likes it thick.
Pro-Acryl paint is great if you're just boshing out gaming miniatures. It's very easy to use. It gives good coverage. But if you want to do, I find it not so good for things like wet blending or two-brush painting, or some of the techniques that you might use, especially when you're doing more display things. I don't do a lot of display at the moment, but that is what my background was rather than gaming miniatures. So I don't like that quick drying style of paint. So that's why you won't see any Pro-Acryl paints. It's nothing against it. It's good quality stuff. It's just not a paint that I like. I also don't like the satin finish, but that's a different thing.
All right.
So moving on to tools, where I'm again going to massively counteract John. And his pro tip of don't buy expensive tools. Starting at the bottom right are my Red Grass Games clippers. Don't buy Games Workshop clippers. They're very bad. But I do think buying a good quality set. Now, these are a cast set. And you won't be able to see it on the camera. You can sort of see it in the thing. And what that means is that they are cast steel, and then they are jointed. Whereas if you look at a set of the Games Workshop ones, they are stamped. That means that the cut I'll get with a pair of these flush cutters is much smoother. If you do it right, now these are going to hold, these are about 25 quid a pair, but you don't need to clean it up. When you cut the piece off, it is cut off, you've got no cleanup. And it will not deform the plastic. Now, if you look at a cheaper pair, when you cut a model, especially if you do a conversion or something like that, you'll get that kind of white area of plastic where you've been cutting, and that's where the plastic has actually been deformed. With a really high quality pair of very sharp ones, so you look at the Tamiya ones, the Godhand ones, this sort of stuff, you won't get that, and it will just cut cleanly. And that can be quite important if you're worried about distorting detail. So moving around on the table then, Gorilla Glue, I use the same one as John, although I don't like the gel very much because it takes too long to dry and it's very easy to obscure detail. Poly cement for plastic models, I've got a combination of the thick and the thin. The thin is generally better, but sometimes with the thick, because it has a little bit longer drying time, it's closer to what John was using with the Revel stuff. It's got a little bit longer drying time, which means you might get a little bit of adjustment in there, whereas the thin, you actually put the parts together and then you put the glue on afterwards and it seeps through, which can be used for a little bit of gap filling, and it's smoothing things off, which is very useful. Moving around then, at the front there, I've got some Tamiya masking tape. Great if you want to do mask something off because you want to be able to airbrush it, or you're in a bit of a hurry, or you want to do hazard straps, things like that. It's really useful stuff. Loads of brands make it, but a little bit of thin masking tape can be really, really handy. Microset and Microsol. I don't know how you do water slide transfers without them anymore. It gives a much cleaner finish. You're much less likely to get bubbling.
Do you want to give a brief description of them in brief for people who've possibly never heard of Microsol or Microset before?
Okay, so when you're using water slide transfers, the traditional way is that you cut your transfer out, you put it on a bit of tissue paper that's wet, then when it separates off, you put it on the model and you just paint some water over it. Now that is basically self-glue onto the model. Now, Microset and Microsol will actually melt the transfer onto the model. So rather than sticking it on, you're melting on. So you're welding onto the surface perfectly. Now, the Microset is what you would use first. So you would put it in your water on the thing, you'd paint some Microset on the model, and then you put your water slide transfer onto the Microset, and it will just sit like that, and you can adjust it to the correct position, and then that will hold it in place. When you've done that and you're happy with it and you've squeezed any air bubbles out of it, you use your Microsol, you paint that over it, and what that does, that's that part that will melt it on and give you that perfect finish for your transfer. And it will just look a lot nicer. You're less likely to get frosting. You might get frosting, especially with old transfers. There's not a lot you can do about that, I'm afraid.
So I first found out what this stuff was for looking into putting it onto the curved surface of Space Marine shoulder pads, because otherwise they wouldn't sit flush. Bastard. But Microsol and Set, when they sort of soften or melt the transfer ever so slightly, it'll over a couple of repeated usages, it'll melt it so that it takes the form of the curved shoulder pad and will sit flush against it and will look much better than it otherwise would.
Can I
tell you a couple of other tips that go with that is gloss it first. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say my tip for the very old transfers that frost, because I use Microset and Microsol. Once I've got, like I use the Microset and then I usually use 2 or 3 coats of Microsol. It depends where it is. Like if it's on a knee for a Space Marine, sometimes you might need 3 coats because then the curvature in the knee is much more strong than the curvature of a shoulder.
Yeah, more pronounced.
But if it frosts, what I do is I'll paint is it Lamy and Medium, which is the clear Citadel paint, over the transfer. So obviously the Microsol has dried, put Lamy and Medium over it, and then if there has been a bit within the frosting, then I would actually just go and paint on top of the Lamy and Medium, like the colour. So let's say I had a black Chaos Black shoulder that had the indents, for the Blood Angels drop. I would just paint the black again over the Lamy and Medium where it's frosted. And that's, like I said, I spend fucking ages on every model. Maybe that's overkill, but you can, it does let you essentially get rid of the frosting.
Yeah, definitely a good trick.
An alternative is to, and this is the sort of way that I tend to do it, is you gloss the model first. You gloss where you want a big transfer. I always recommend doing that because you'll get a easier.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then once you've Microsoled it on there, you gloss again over the top, and that will take a lot of that frosting away, the same as a Lamy and Medium will. And then you can paint over bits, which I've had to do as well. And sometimes you might want to do that anyway. You might use a transfer as a template, and you can add a bit of detail with a freehand to it, and then that's the same kind of idea.
Nice.
So keep moving around. Next to it, I've got my pin vise, and that is a Tamiya pin vise. Again, it's a little bit more expensive. I've got...
For those who don't know, a pin vise is a fancy name for a small handheld drill.
Yeah, it's just a tiny drill.
I don't know why they call it a pin vise rather than a small handheld drill, but they call it a pin vise.
Yeah, I've got a few. That's the Games Workshop one that they produced. That was really good, actually, but the new one isn't as good. This is really old. This has got to be 15 years old, that one.
Dating back a little while as well, yeah.
I've got this old wooden one, which is quite comfy in the hand, but the way it grips the needle is a little annoying. But this is I keep this one at this size because it's perfect for heavy bolters. And then I've got my Tamiya one, which is actually behind me. And this is my best one because the difference between this and a cheaper one is it's better at holding the needle completely central. So when you're rotating it, you get very little kind of lateral flex in the needle, which can give you an ugly hole. And that's used for pinning and drilling up barrels and all sorts of stuff. I've got a scalpel because I prefer scalpels to modelling knives, personal preference really. And I use the same for scraping mould lines and things like that. I've got some sandpaper and that, but often I don't find I need it. A couple of little pipettes, that's handy for putting contrast paints and mixing things if you want to get a decent ratio. In the centre, I've got my current favourite painting handle, which is the Redgrass Games painting handle, and this is the new one, and that's brilliant because that swivels around, so you can rotate it while still maintaining a good grip. A couple of my favourite varnishes, that is Mig's Lucky Varnish Ultra Matte and Vallejo Polyurethane Gloss Varnish. I get through loads of gloss varnish because I use it before I use any oils or transfers or weathering or anything like that. Next to that is the Vallejo Plastic Putty, which is incredible for filling holes. It comes in a little tube like a normal paint. You squirt it in the hole, you squirt it on something, and you put it over. Use a little bit of water to smooth it round. Once it's dry, you can file it and all sorts, and it gets fantastic. My brush soap is on there. John's already talked about that, so I'm not going to add anything else. You can see my airbrush on the left there. This is my airbrush. It is a Harder and Steenbeck Evolution Silverline. They do make nicer ones, but to be honest, I haven't found any reason to buy it. I use a 0.4 needle, which is actually massive. If you look at someone like Angel Giraldez, he's using like a 0.15 or something to get the thinnest of lines. I've got 0.4. I've never found it too big to do anything, and it means that I can blast metallics or whatever I want for it without having to swap the needle every 5 minutes. It's a bit less likely to clog as well, and I'm running at about 25 psi on the compressor, if anybody cares. Above it, you've got some brushes. I've got some cheapy synthetic ones. I don't care what brand they are. They happen to be Citadel, and the reason they're Citadel is they come free with the Imperium magazine. So I just had a few of them. I don't care what they are. They're just cheapies, and therefore some metallic stuff, but not really. I mostly use them for oils and things like that. My metallic brushes are generally my sable brushes that have gotten a bit old and they've started to lose their tip. Above it, you can see some of my current brushes. I absolutely believe in buying good quality brushes and looking after them. I've got a couple of my favorites there. That is my Squidmar large brush, which is actually about size 1. Then I've got my Artis Opus size 5, which if anybody's watched my streams, I use a ginormous brush and it becomes a little bit laughable. But if you've got a good enough quality brush, you can use a much bigger one. And I think it gives you a smoother blend. And if it's a good enough tip on it, you can still paint. I've painted eyes with a size 5 before. Yep. Then I've got my Series D dry brush. That's my favourite one. It's the one I use the most, and it's the size M. I've also got size XL for when I'm feeling lazy. Something a couple of people asked me about is my silicone brush. You can find them on the internet. They're really for sculpting, but they are amazing for doing texture paints or sculpting with green stuff. And the silicone brush is literally just a wooden handle, and then the end is a piece of silicone. So it's flexible. It bends, which makes it incredible for doing texture paints, because you can scoop it round and change the shape and all this sort of stuff, which I find is really handy. There's a couple of lolly sticks above. I bought a big bag of them once, just plain lolly sticks for mixing paint, for occasionally sticking things so I can get a better grip on it, or spatulaing things. You can't beat them. Mark said about toothpicks earlier, and I've got some of those there as well. I use quite a lot. And then next to it are some little metal mixing dishes, which if you use an airbrush, because they've got a little thing that's nice to pour it in or mix up an interesting colour paint. If you want to thin down something to do a wash or something like that, they are fantastic for that. You get them off Amazon in giant bags for a couple of quid a bag. And you can keep reusing them by keep cleaning them. They're extremely useful, and I absolutely recommend it. And I think that's everything on the list that's on the page. Miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Unless you want to talk about the
take a breath now.
Yeah, go for it. Wow.
Right, so yeah, that's kind of my things that I use day to day quite a lot.
I wouldn't mind a link to that clipper thing that you mentioned earlier. I'll be interested in looking into those later. So
good pair of clippers.
Yeah, bung that link.
They're red grass ones. They're not the only ones that are out there, but decent quality clippers are genuinely worth the money if you're not going to be a moron and try and cut like metal models, and you will wear them out if you start cutting through big hunks of resin.
Yeah, cool. I mean, my clippers that I've got, they were old Games Workshop ones that I think I got with the magazine, and they've started to get little dents in where I've used them to cut wire.
And I've had these for about 2 years, this particular pair, and there isn't a single dent in it. But that's because I don't cut wire. I've got an old pair exactly the same as yours, I bet, Games Workshop old clippers, that I might use if I've got to trim a white metal model or a big old honk of resin or something, because I don't care about the clippers. I'm just chonking a lump off. So I keep those for doing grunt work, and these are the plastics.
Cool.
Or display models.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
That's a lot of... that's my setup. That's the kit I like to use. There's other paints and stuff I use, but they're more specific to a job.
trying to tell if John's paying attention, if he's just sort of like zonked and half
I'm
asleep.
trying to decide if I tell you how old the clippers are and how much mine costs. So I think we're going to move swiftly on because I think I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum. So, yeah.
Well, you do what your job takes, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't really matter. You don't. Oh, and I think this is important to note. You don't need this stuff.
No.
Yeah.
I run the school club. I've got loads of kids in there. They're having a whale of a time. They're painting all sorts of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's shit. It doesn't matter. They're having a lot of fun doing it. They're just using Citadel paints. They're using those terrible Citadel starter brushes they give away for nothing and have bristles pointing in all directions. But it doesn't matter because they're having fun.
Yeah.
And you can start off with a couple of paints, a cheapy paint set, and a couple of synthetic brushes, and just build these up over time. You know, all three of us have been painting for probably 20 years, 30 years between each.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of shit.
Yeah, that's about right.
You know, we didn't
Very
buy
true.
it all in one go.
Oh God, no.
No. Of course we didn't.
And I think that's important to note. You don't
I
need
think that's
this.
probably
This is-
the point I was trying to make. Like, don't just rush out and buy it. Don't feel like you need to
Just don't
rush
need
out
it.
and buy everything. You know, like if it's a difference between you getting a new model and you getting a new pair of clippers at the start of your journey, then probably start with the model.
Yeah.
you know,
And if you want advice at any
practice
point,
painting things.
hit us up. Leave something in the comments.
Yeah.
Tell what you've got. Tell us what you're asking for, and we'll see what advice we can give you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Or log on to the streams. You know, it doesn't matter how good the piece of equipment is. You can spend any amount of money on a piece of equipment, and it will not make you as good a painter as just painting some more models.
Yes, that's very true.
You know, paint more models if you want to get a better painter, and then if you want a slightly better drill that's got a slightly less wobbly nib in it, go nuts. But that's not going to make me a better
playing
painter.
more
That's
games
just
will
going to
make
make
you
it.
a better gamer.
Yeah.
There's no substitute. You can't learn this from YouTube. You might get some tips. You might get better color theory, or you might understand how light placement for non-metallic metals or something works better. But it's not a substitute for just painting some more models.
Yes.
When John wins his tournament, and he will, it'll be because he plays games every week. That'll be the largest part of it,
Yeah.
and you'll have earned
feel
it.
sorry for me.
You'll have earned it. Yeah.
Oh. All right. What's the next story?
Okay. Pile of glory.
Woohoo!
Hey, Pile of Glory. I'm really upset that it's not Pile of Glory anymore, but I mean, that's fine.
I'm going to
I
bring it
guess-
back, but it was upsetting Mark too much.
It did wind me up a bit. You'll have to host one of these days, and then you can change it to be what you want it to be.
Okay, we'll do. Deal.
We don't know what he's doing next
Yeah.
week, so we'll see.
It's a bit creepier than glory piles. I like it when we said that. Right. Okay. Gory hole. John,
Oh,
what have you been
that's
painting?
wrong.
I'm playing Death Company again for the millionth time. I mean, I'm adding a shitload of variants of the weapon options. I need to buy another squad of Death Company. If you've been speaking to me recently, I hate the state Blood Angels are in. We have 2 viable units in the Death Company and the Sanguinius Guard. Yeah, so you need more of them.
Yeah.
There's so much to say. I think I'm honestly going to buy another box of Death Company just so I have the second squad of 5 hammers. I feel like I'm going to get there with. I mean, these guys are. I'm just on base colors, but I'm plugging away. I guess it's a batch paint of 11. I'm probably going to buy more and make up batch paint of 16
You
over the
could
Christmas holiday.
get some Vanguard vets and get 4 hammers in the box.
Oh, I've got plenty of hammers. It's just I would need 4 or 5 more Death Company chassis, I guess, or whatever you would
Well, they
call
could
them.
be Vanguard veterans. I suppose they'd be a little bit less decorated. But yeah.
So yeah, Death Company is my jam at the moment. I enjoy playing Death Company. I just think that I've got so many of them, it's kind of getting a bit stupid. But
It was fun.
so, yeah,
Have you got any, have you gone to the level of non-jump pack Death Company, Death Company Storm Raven, Death Company Drop Pod, Death Company Dreadnought?
I've got the Death Company Impulsor, which I don't know when I'm ever going to use because I don't have any Primaris Death Company, but I do have the Death Company Impulsor. And I've got heaps of old Death Company with hand flamers, but I just can't get excited over Strength 3 hand flamers. I mean, the meta has moved on, right? Strength 3 guns are.
I've got 5 Death Company with jump packs with Power Fist and Chainsword on each of them.
Yeah, so how much play
They're
do they get?
utterly fucking useless.
Yeah, so exactly. So I've got the same. So when I finally show off all my army, because I'm going to do that video at some point for Blood Angels, I guess, it's going to have like 50 Death Company, and people are going to be like, why the fuck did you make all these Death Company with these stupid weapon options? And I was like, well, at one point in time, they weren't stupid.
Yeah.
So I've done this, and the other thing I wanted to share this week was I put in another order for no effort base adapter rings. These are on YouTube. Each of these bundles costs something like $2.99 or $3.99.
Yeah, because they're 3D printed. Yeah.
The 32s to 40 mils will take like Primaris models up to like characters. So let's say you had like an intercessor and you wanted him to be a Primaris captain. You don't want to buy a captain. You can put him on one of these bases. There you go. The middle ones will take your old 25mm Terminators up to modern 40mm Terminators. And then your last one will take your old 25mm characters up to 32, or like tactical squads up to 32. So I swear by these base extenders. I'm sure, have you guys seen me that I just put green stuff, put the base extender in, glue it, green stuff it, you're good to go?
Yeah, makes sense. I've done the same thing.
So I bought another set on eBay. The link's literally right there in the screenshot. If you eBay those, you'll find them. I think they're really useful, and they're cheap. Like, well, maybe because you've got the expensive clippers, you might find it easy to take models off the wrong size base.
Do you know what? I don't have any, and that's because I get so anal about it that I will strip a model, use some white spirit so that I can break down the glue, completely rebuild it, and then repaint it.
Okay, all right. So yeah, we are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Where I buy the 30p.
I just can't cope with it.
Done.
No, I can't cope with it. It'll annoy me. I've stripped and repainted my models so many times. People are like, "How big's your army?" It's like, it's not that big at the moment because half of it's covered in nitromors or isopropyl alcohol, where I've stripped it for the 300th time because I'm not happy with the. But then I enjoy the painting, so that's the point.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, "How long you had that Alienware keyboard, mate?"
Oh, like 20 years probably.
Awesome.
I mean, it works, right?
Yeah, yeah.
As long as
you don't get keyboards with multimedia buttons on them these days, really, do you?
I find my keyboards tend to die after a few years because one of the buttons will go or one of the keys will go and it'll just start getting annoying. It's like, fuck this, I'm going to get a new keyboard now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Alienware do last, I guess.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah. But no, I swear by these base extenders. I think they're great.
They are good. If you're not some kind of lunatic like me, then they are certainly something you should consider.
Yeah. The convenience you get for the price they are is worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If that's what you value. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So this is where things start getting a little bit more esoteric. Mark and I went to Warhammer World and we met some of you.
Woohoo! That was awesome.
It was a great day. We had a lot of fun. Yeah, that was basically it. So we took a picture. There's the Rhino and the Space Marine outside.
Yeah.
They need that Marine to become Primaris, don't they? His proportions are still wrong.
I'd be so upset if they did.
Yeah.
That is iconic. He has been there since my childhood. I remember seeing the pictures in White Dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be so sad if they changed them. So yeah, we went to Warhammer World. We met some of you guys, and we had a great day. We had some grub in Bugman's Bar.
Yeah,
and we played some Blood Bowl.
Yep.
And I didn't take these pictures. They were taken by. He's on the Blood Angels Discord. This guy sitting down there because he's in his wheelchair. By AMPUT, he calls himself on the Discord. Right. And then next to him is Horus on the Discord as well.
Or Catapult as well, yeah.
Catapult, yeah. And that's the guy in the weird hat. And those guys, they came to meet with us and they took the pictures. So, blame them. And we played some Blood Bowl.
So this is Tony learn how to play Blood Bowl, yeah.
Yeah, this is Mark teaching me how to play Blood Bowl with a bit of sevens. I was the Orcs and he was the Imperial Nobility, weren't they?
No, they were just basic humans, these ones.
Whatever they are. People. And that quickly degenerated into me trying to kill him.
Yep.
And not really worrying too much about the ball.
We played, you did score, though. You did get there.
I did score a goal, and we drew on that one.
Oh, yes.
We did. but I think I won because I managed to actually kill some of your players, which was the important part all along. And then after that, and we had a bit of lunch, we thought, right, now it's time for the main event. It is time to play a game. So you can see there our setup with Mark's Wood Elves beautifully laid out in this fantastic kind of pattern. Then he then realised that that was not how we should be attacking.
I set up as if I was
then,
receiving, not attacking, because I was stupid at that point. So yeah, that was
and
great.
my snotlings, just
it was so annoying. Oh my god, they were annoying.
And we played. It took so long because my snotlings were just really annoying.
Yeah, and it was Tony's first full game. How did you find it? What do you think of Blood Bowl after the day?
I love it so much that I went home and started looking up stuff to buy.
So you bought a troll for your team, and you'd already got another one.
Yeah.
So what stuff are you looking at buying?
I think I'm going to go with the Necromantic Horrors Blood Bowl team, and the reason for that is when I saw that werewolf who was catching a ball in his mouth.
Yeah.
And then the guys with the pumpkin heads.
Yeah.
And that was like Halloween, the team, and Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what they are.
This is awesome, and I love it, and I don't care about anything else. It's just the only reason I have the Snotlings is because they are silly and awesome. So yeah, we did play, and I would say we started out, but you can see in that bit there's a little marker where the ball landed, and my Snotlings resolutely not picking up the ball.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we went through the whole game where I never intentionally picked up the ball because it was much more important for me to try and foul him.
Yep.
And you can see that beautiful. Basically, what it turned into was me seeing how many Snotlings I could get round an elf to get the maximum bonus to try and foul it to death.
Yeah.
And that's all that happened. Basically, I just completely ignored the ball. Mark was just running around like trying to score while I tried to kill his elves.
And every time he did a foul, he almost got sent off, and he argued the call. And every single time he rolled 6 on a d6 to try and argue the call with the ref so that he wouldn't get sent off. And every time he succeeded,
I didn't get sent off, and I completely got away with it every single time.
Oh god!
Couldn't do that again if you tried. Then I guess
no. But you can see that I did manage to get 8 Snotlings around 1 elf.
Yeah. As evidenced by the fact there's an empty hole on the pitch where the elf used to be. Yep.
And that's all I did.
So what was the final score in this game then?
I don't even care.
We only played one half.
I managed to murder 2 elves.
Really, really long. I think I probably scored in the end, but
you
either way.
2. I do know what the score was. It was 2-0.
Was it?
Because the second down, whatever it was, went on for so long because I just constantly fouled you. And completely ignored the ball.
Yep.
And then just kept surrounding everything with Snotlings.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
It was delay tactic the game / fouling people for fun and profit.
There's a couple of goblin special characters you can get who might be useful for your team. One of them is called Fungus the Loon, who's a guy with a ball and chain. He goes around waving it like a madman and just smashes into things. He's got strength 7. He's ridiculous. He's stronger than a tree man is because of the ball and chain. And then there's a guy called Bomber Dribble Snot, who's a guy who throws bombs like your other 2 Snotlings. But
that was also something.
He's a tiny bit better at it.
I blew up more of my. Actually killed, not took out of action, more of my own Snotlings than Mark did.
Yeah, by throwing bombs and having them deviate or intercepted along the way.
One of them, I threw a bomb at someone who was basically next to me on the hope that it would kill more elves and Snotlings.
Those bombs are lethal. They're horrible.
Oh, so much
They're
fun.
the most dangerous thing in your team.
I absolutely love Blood Bowls and Snotling teams. But I would never want to... If I was one of these people that take the game really seriously, and my opponent turned up with Snotlings, I would go home. You're going to win, but they are not a team to be taken seriously. They are just dickheads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark's a great person to play with as well. He took the ridiculous, bizarre, silly fouling, and everybody's got dodge and everybody's got tiny and titchy, so you can't do anything about them, and they're just going to run everywhere and be in the way. With good humour, he didn't get too wound up. Well, that's been Adi trying to foul everybody. See that elf? He's now surrounded by 10 snotlings.
Yeah.
So that still gives him like a minus to hit.
Any snotling that got punched even slightly was just like all off. They're so ridiculously weak. They're so not resilient in the slightest. But there's so many of them.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about them. Oh my god, they're annoying. Anyway, right.
Can't block them or anything.
The only way you can block them is with a line of people across the pitch, because they'll ignore all your tackle zones, they'll dodge through them on a 2+ with a reroll every single time, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing at all.
I managed to be in the way of that tree man every single turn. I don't think it did anything.
It's a great game. It's really, really annoying.
Oh, so, yeah, I loved it. It was great fun. We definitely agree with that. Anyway, so that was our trip to Warhammer World. And speaking of things, there is Mark's beautifully painted Wood Elf team that he took to us. And he did fully paint with some badgering, because at one point he put something on the board that wasn't painted, and then we bullied him into taking it off the board and replacing it with something painted.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. No, it's good to get done. I'm really happy with them.
They look great. Cool. They really do.
So I'll be taking them to a Blood Bowl tournament at the end of November and another one at the start of December.
Nice. Good luck.
Are you going to make changes to your lineup?
No, that's to do that. I'll have to paint more models.
Fair enough. Those war dancers are filth.
Yes, that is agreed upon by the vast amount of Blood Bowl players in the world, that war dancers are filth. Yeah. They're horrible. They're some of the most expensive players in the game because they're disgusting.
Yeah. That tree man was rubbish.
It's got movement too.
It's got 2-inch movement or whatever. It just stands in the middle of the board being a tree.
Yeah, that's literally its job. Its job is
You don't need the man part of this. It's just a tree.
Yeah, that's how it works.
I did try and run it over with a pump wagon.
Didn't quite work.
I did run some elves over though. They're beautiful. I love them. I think they look really good.
Appreciate it.
And you did a great job.
They are almost entirely done with contrast, except for the few bits that are metallic.
We've been talking about paints all night, and contrast, actually, I'm not a big fan of using it as intended and just slopping it on, but if you want some speed painting stuff, they are fantastic. There's no way that I could get as much painted as I do get painted without using it.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
So, flicking over what I've been up to, you can see my snotlings. They were very brightly coloured.
They were, and they're great.
I didn't fuck about with that.
Loads of little ones, bunches of ones on stilts, ones with grenades, ones on space hoppers. Oh god, stupid snotlings.
I had a lot of fun. They were so much fun to paint. And you can see some of it on stream. I was trying to do all of it on stream, but I just ran out of time. Towards the end, I'm just like, finish. Got one more day. I've been giving Mark so much shit that I can't afford to turn up with unpainted models. So yeah, I did get those finished. I also got talking about repainting things. I got my incursors redone with their new shiny Mark IV heads. Finally done those and got those based, and I got my Sagittarium finished as well. They do look a little bit yellow in the picture. They're not quite as yellow as that. Don't know why the camera just couldn't cope with the metallic.
No, fair
but yeah, so that was that. I got a fair bit done actually. The snotlings took most of the time, to be honest. It was finishing the other two off quite quick. And then, of course, not in the picture, I did build the laser destroyer, which was in the video.
Oh yes.
If anybody's watched that.
Did either of you guys like the new Blood Angels Mark 6 heads from Forge World? Are we not excited about it? No,
didn't like them at all.
I think they're all right. I'm not going to go out my way to get them, but for me, I mean,
it was £18.
Beakies look cool and all, but I use a lot of beakies on my Raven Guard army is entirely beakies. Every single one of them is a beaky helmet. So I try to avoid using one of my Blood Angels for that base reason.
Okay. I just like the beakies because they're old 2nd edition, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
1st edition, really, I suppose. 2nd edition was when they started off normal. I love beakies, actually. I've got nothing against them. I didn't like the Blood Angel specific ones. I thought that the weird filigree on them just made them all look like they've had bad kind of like accidents in a beauty parlor. They just look like they've got super thick eyebrows on them. You know what I'm going for. We're talking about people who are orange and have giant thick eyebrows that are drawn on, and they were kind of like the Space Marine equivalents.
Okay.
They just
don't you have those? Don't you have that on the helmets that those ones have got?
No, they've got a little bit of filigree and things like that on them, but they haven't got that kind of lines across the eyes.
Okay.
Which makes them look permanently surprised.
I was thinking that maybe what I would do would be put some of those new beaks on some Terminators, because I was thinking that would look really good.
I think you should. Yeah.
It looks better than that fucking Primaris head.
Yeah. I think that would distract from the abomination that is the Primaris helmet. Yeah. It was just as bad, but hey, there we go.
That needs to be a thumbnail.
Not quite as bad.
People will click on it just to tell me that I'm an idiot.
Yeah, they're nothing against them. I love the shoulder pads, and I've got quite a few of the Forge World shoulder pads and things, but there's a few of the designs in there that just did not rub me up the right way. And if I'm honest, the Mark IV heads I use for the Incursors, there's a couple of those that I'm not. There's one with this kind of weird face grill thing that I just don't
do know
like.
the one you're talking about. Yeah.
In the picture, I've hidden him in the background a bit because I just don't like it.
Fair enough. Cool. Yeah. So what's next on the agenda for you, Tony, paint-wise?
What have I got on the desk? I did say earlier I'm doing Constantin Valdor for a bit of fun. But also I've got a commission to do an Orlok Necromunda gang.
Oh, cool.
But that looks like it's going to be quite a big one. Then I've got my own Necromunda Enforcers that I need to get done. I've got probably a little bit more Blood Bowl than he's doing. And then for my Blood Angels, I've got some Assault Terminators that need properly finishing off and doing nicely. So that's my kind of next couple of jobs. I don't think I'll get them done before the next filming, but I'll see how far I can get.
Okay. On that bombshell then, are we...
I think so.
Going to see you next week when we'll talk about the thing.
Yeah. That is exactly how that will work.
That's exactly how that worked, even though we filmed it an hour ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just confusing.
Also,
remember to... Go on.
After you.
I'll do it then. Remember to click the like button if you liked it. Click the dislike button if you didn't like it. Subscribe if you're being responsible about it. Make sure that you're enjoying your hobby and not getting too worked up about it. The competitive meta is shit and it's not going to improve anytime soon, no matter how much you rant about it.
Yeah.
And just have fun with it. It's a hobby. It's relaxing. If it's not being relaxing, probably take some time out and do something else for a bit.
If we can succeed at helping any of you find the fun a little bit more, then this will have all been worthwhile.
Yes, and please leave us any comments you might have about hobbying in general. I'm sure Tony would be happy to answer some of those more complicated
we read
questions.
every comment.
Yeah.
I and the other guys, we try and answer most of them. I think I answer a few more, but we do try and read and respond to all of your comments, even the mean ones, but I give them to Mark because otherwise I'm too sarky about it.
If anybody wants any links about the bits that you've seen on our hobby desks or things that are being used, like in either particular paints or the clippers or the paint racks or anything like that, let us know. We're happy to share them.
Or things we didn't even mention. Maybe you might be like, oh, what colour purple do you use? And this sort of shit. So I'm sure we'll all chip in there if you've got any questions.
All right.
Okay. We'll see you guys next week. We have changed the schedule. We are putting something out every week now.
Yeah.
Long video, short video, long video, short video. So if you're confused as to why there's more videos, then don't be. Just subscribe and you'll see all of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you click that little bell. If you don't, you won't.
All right. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Bye-bye, everybody.